to the Over the Line podcast. I'm your host, James McGee. This podcast is dedicated to reshaping the future of American soccer by having real conversations about the challenges holding our system back and exploring the opportunities to help take the game over the line. My mission is simple: to uncover the truth, amplify the voices of trailblazers, and help educate the next generation of players and parents so they can navigate the system and help unlock their full potential, both on and off the field. If this conversation inspires you, challenges your perspective, or adds value to your journey, please be sure to rate, review, and share it so we know it's making an impact. Now, let's dive into today's episode. With one of my former teammates, Bryan de la Fuente. Bryan, you want to introduce yourself, kind of give an idea of your background, just kind of a quick recap and what you're doing now.
Yeah, well, my name is Bryan de la Fuente. Thank you for having me. I appreciate the invite. I retired about 3 years ago from playing professional. I was able to play like 12 years at the highest level. I came up with the Chivas USA Academy, and then from there I went on to playing in Mexico, overseas in Armenia, and back in the States and in USL, the NISA League, where I had the pleasure to playing with you. Now I'm on this side of the game, coaching and trying to give back to the youth, with my knowledge, if whatever that means, if it's much or not, I'm just trying to help them out. Hopefully I'm doing a good job, we'll see.
For sure. Growing up kind of in that academy system with Chivas and doing all that, where do you see kind of the differences in, obviously you grew up playing in those sorts of academy, which Chivas was kind of MLS, but it also had a little bit more of like the Mexican youth system in that, I'm sure, compared to most of the MLS academy type programs. Where would you say the kind of differences between how things were growing up playing with Chivas and the youth system as you currently see in your club?
Yeah. Well, I think, first of all, I grew up in Mexico playing for Chivas in Mexico, right? And then until I was about 15, the opportunity came up with one of my former coaches in Mexico. He started working with the Chivas USA Academy here in California.
Yeah.
And he knew I was born in the States, so he's like, hey, you would be a perfect candidate or a perfect example to go through the system right now that the soccer in the US is starting to grow, right? Chivas USA was a pretty new team, right? It was 2005 when they bought the franchise for the MLS, and in 2007 it was the first year for the academy. They only had about 3 teams. It was like the U19, U17, and U15, I believe, right? So I decided to try it. I moved to California, and for high school and mainly for the soccer. And I thought, coming from Mexico, I have the level, it's better than the US. Like I don't know anything about soccer here in the US at that point, right?
Right.
And it was a little bit of it was definitely different. It was definitely different. It was more physical here. The boys were stronger than I was. So it was a little bit difficult to get used to it at the beginning. So I definitely had a hard time to adjust. But I think the coaching staff running the academy, in my opinion, they did the best they could with what they had available, right? We're talking about not every MLS team had academy at that time.
Yep.
It was only a few MLS teams that they were actually investing in their academy system, and we were one of them. So every year it gotten better and better, So my first year was, I think we were playing on the DA league, and at that time there was only in California there was only three leagues. It was the Coast League, I believe, the DA, where the MLS academies would play, Galaxy, Chivas USA, which were the only two LA teams, and then you would play the Pats, Pateadores, and then Strikers. I don't recall some of these clubs that have been, you know, playing for a while, that they're big time, but that was it. There was only 2-3 leagues that you could play in.
Yeah.
The difference now is like everyone has their own league.
Yeah.
Everyone has their own platform. So you, as a parent, I understand, right? If I come to you and tell you, hey, my club is playing this league that gives you the right platform. I'm trying to sell you something for you to come join my club. But do I actually want the best for your kid? Am I actually being honest in offering you the best platform, or do I just want to fill in the spot and the fees and cover the expenses, right? I think that is what I am having trouble understanding now that I'm on this side,
Yeah.
um, and comparing to what I used to have, or what I had when I was playing, when I was that age, 15,
Sure.
16 years old, right? Like I said, there was only three leagues, right? If you were in the academy, for example, if you were in the Chivas USA Academy, or the LA Galaxy Academy, you didn't pay nothing.
Yeah.
You have to pay. You were sponsored. You were part of a professional academy. So I think it was. I understand. The soccer is growing at a high speed in the US. If I look back, it's like it's been 14 years and it's been growing a lot,
Yeah.
right? And I understand, right? There was gonna be these changes where people were gonna go out of their way and create new leagues and new platform opportunities, right? Uh, but I think that's the main difference. Back in the days, it was three leagues,
Yeah.
right? And
Yeah.
then now it's, I don't even know.
A million leagues. Yeah. I mean, for sure. You're 32, right?
Yeah, I am turning 33 in July.
Okay. Yeah. So, I mean, I was 28, and when I was growing up playing, it's like similar for me. I didn't grow up playing DA. I grew up playing at a normal youth club in Arizona, and it was pretty much like for where we were at, it was DA was the top level, and then it was kind of the normal youth club system after that. And there were some better clubs and some clubs that weren't as good, right? But all of it kind of flowed through how you performed in the state. Like state cup was what mattered most. If you won state cup, then you're going to regionals, nationals, getting invites to national league. And there's some bigger tournaments obviously that mattered too. So, but it was a lot more clear of where the platforms are. If your team's the best, you're going to be one of the top teams in state cup. You're going to be playing in the biggest tournaments in the country. And now it just seems so diluted where you've got MLS Next, the normal, like true MLS academies that are in MLS Next, but the ones that aren't MLS academies are different. ECNL, E64 and all the plethora of leagues. So I definitely see, and like when I'm talking with parents and the kids that I coach and having these conversations with them, me and you, like we both grew up playing in this. And I know for myself, it's still confusing for me at times, like all the different leagues. So it's like just imagine how hard it is for some of these parents that are trying to do the best things for their kids and they have no soccer background at all. Like they don't really know where to go, what to do. So they're taking people like the coaches at these clubs, they're taking their word at face value. And some people have better intentions than others in it, but it's definitely difficult. And one of my biggest issues is I think a lot of this has become centered around money. Like I understand that this is a business, but at the same time, like the US and you look at us as a whole and how do we get to a point where we're truly competing on the world stage? And I feel like the shift has to come from at those younger ages from being so money oriented to development oriented. And like the development can turn into making money down the road. It's just like that's not how the system's set up right now. So I guess kind of like for you and y'all's youth club, how how do you guys kind of manage that? Like, what are your goals in bringing kids in and kind of like what, I guess, let me bring that back. What brought you into coaching in the first place? What made you want to kind of get into that?
So I always knew I wanted to coach, right? I started coaching 10-year-olds here and there when I was playing in Cal United. Right?
Yeah,
They approached me, AC Brea, club in Brea, in Orange County. They approached me and they asked me if I wanted to help them, on the nights that I was able to, if we weren't traveling or having practices or anything. So, I always knew that's what I wanted to do after.
right.
So I started coaching 10-year-olds, and at first I saw it as okay, let's see what happens, right?
Yeah,
But then few months in, I actually started liking it. I actually start seeing results on the work I was doing with the boys. And then I enjoyed it. It became my passion seeing these kids develop, you know. So in my head, I was like, okay, I might not be as bad as a coach, like they're learning,
yeah,
like they're going forward, is they're winning now, they're progressing, they're actually understanding what I want from them, right? So I always knew it was when I was done playing, whatever time that was, I wanted to get back into coaching, you know. So once I moved it into back to Vegas, the last year that I played with Cal United, I started working with a club here in Vegas for a couple of months. You're just helping them out with a couple of the older groups. At that point, it was like 05s and 06s,
yeah,
really, like 17, 18-year-olds as assistant, just kind of helping the coach. But the philosophy, the vision, and how that specific club was running, it didn't align with my views and what I wanted, right? Uh, so it was only like a couple of months that I was there until I met the owner. His name is Said, and the other director at that point, that his name is Rodrigo. They reached out to me and we sat down and met, and after seeing what they wanted or how they've been running the club, Said, the founder and the owner at Players, he's been running the club for 35 years. Uh, he showed me how he runs his club, and what he's been doing to be successful. So that aligned more to me. Right? He's not money hungry.
right,
He Our fees are the lowest in Vegas, and we're the biggest club, and we have the numbers. We have more kids than any other club, and it's not because we want to be the biggest one. We just want the fees, you
Right.
know. In reality, we sponsor a lot of kids,
Yeah.
you know. And if I tell you how much our fees are and tell you that a lot of our families can't afford it, you know, you would be shocked, you know. But we don't let that stop in the kid that wants to play club. Uh, you know, we're like, okay, you want to play club? Let's find a way to help you. You're always gonna have a place in our club. You
Yeah.
know, if we have to create more team, and if we have to hire new coaches, we do it. You know, we're not playing any MLS Next, ECNL, E64, EA, none of these leagues. We strictly stick with the USYS. We play the State League here in Vegas, the State Cup. Uh, we play every local tournament, uh, couple out of state tournaments, and then obviously USYS has their Desert Conference league, and then you go to regionals, you go to nationals, you know. So we do that as well.
Yeah.
But we just put in the work, you know. We just put in the work in during the week, and we don't try to sell anything to the parents, you know. Um, I don't think the clubs here in Vegas that have those platforms are any better than us, you know. Uh, some of our top teams, when they play their platform teams, the majority of times we ended up, you know, we end up winning, we end up beating them.
Yeah.
So it's um, it's frustrating for me, you know, because we develop the players, and like you said, some of these parents, they never play soccer. They are lost,
Yeah.
right? So when they come to us, they just want to join a club. They want to join structure, organization. You know, they want their kids to train at the as much of a professional environment as possible, right? Instead of being on rec.
Yeah.
Then when the kid gets better, when we develop the kids, and then the other clubs find out, they start getting in their ears like, oh, that's not gonna take you anywhere. You need to be on this platform, right? So they start selling the platform.
Right.
They go, they spend their money, but nothing happens, you know. And I'm not against any platform,
Sure.
right? I'm just against, and I always said it, if I'm gonna join one of these platforms, I'm gonna make sure first my families could afford it. I'm gonna find a way to come up with a plan where it's gonna be affordable for the families, right? Because if I'm gonna join a platform, I want to make sure I want to have competitive teams. Because I don't care if you as a parent are spending $10 a month or $100 a month, right? You are still paying money to this platform or to playing on this platform, right? You're traveling, so I want to make it work. If you're spending $10, I want those $10 to be worth it because you're gonna go and compete.
Right.
You know, the fact that you're playing, not because you're playing $5, oh, it's okay. We don't have to compete. We have what we have, and if we win, we win. If we lose, we lose. Or if we're developing, we're developing. If not, at least you're not paying much. You're paying $5,
Yeah.
right? So what I always say, if I'm gonna look into joining a platform, I want to make sure I have competitive teams where if parents are gonna go out of their way to spend their money, right? We are gonna go and compete, and we're not just gonna be going and be the lowest in the table, but at least we're playing in this platform,
Right.
right? Which is what happened in not only here in Vegas, but in the whole country in some of these leagues,
Yeah.
right? Oh, but we are playing here. That's the difference. Yeah, you are playing here, but who's watching you, right? Because in reality, you're not competing.
Yeah. And how
I don't know
much
if
better
I'm
are you
making
getting?
sense. Yeah, I don't know if I'm making sense, but
Yeah,
uh,
for sure. I think
well,
like you said, these are our pathways to success, and some platforms do have a higher um, pool of more talented players, but that doesn't mean that that's necessarily the best choice for your kid or for your family, whatever that may be. I think there's a lot of things that come into account in each family. Every family's going to be different. I think, in my opinion, um, and I want to hear your thoughts on this too, but I think so many people become enamored from a young age at like the results, like you talk about the platform, but also the results of the club, like the combination of those two, like winning and the platform matter a lot more than they should to parents and even to kids and I feel like we sacrifice some development for that, especially at the younger ages. It becomes about platform you're playing, is your team winning. Like that's what matters more than the development of these players, and teams will go, or parents and families will go change clubs, whatever that may be, to a club that is playing in better platforms or is a club that is historically a more winning club or a bigger club because they think that's best when in reality they could be much better suited at a smaller club that doesn't have all these platforms because they're going to be developed better. So for you, how does your club balance development versus team results and winning and losing? How do you guys balance that out?
yeah. So, like you're saying, right, going off what you said, obviously, as parents, it's hard to watch your kids always losing, right?
Yeah,
Uh, so there's always some issues there, right? When you're playing in the top team on, for example, in our club, right? And the top team, the results are not there. Parents only look at we have not won a tournament.
right,
Oh, we're not winning games. Oh, but they don't look at how long has the team been together. Is it the first season? Is it second season? Right? They don't look more on that, like the big picture of, yes, is the top team, but who are you playing against? How long it has the team been together playing? Is it a new coach that just took the team? Like we need to see the bigger picture and see if the kids are actually developing without the result. And it becomes contradicting because of what I just said with the platforms, right? Um, because parents, with what I just said, someone could come to me and say like, well, yeah, but at least they're playing in a platform, they're developing and they're getting better, right? But I don't think if I have a team that I know they're not ready for that platform, I put them in the platform, they're gonna be losing 8, 10-0, 15-0.
yeah,
They're not developing.
yeah,
I don't mind losing every game in this platform, but at least I know that they are developing. They are game by game, they're getting better. I have a team uh, that is a prospect that has a future that they're ready to compete. And with that being said, it's a 2-1 game, 3-2 game, 4-3 game. Like a close game that we're not winning, but we're competing.
right,
10-0 is not competing.
yeah,
10-0 is not competing, and I cannot excuse that as, well, but at least we're playing on this platform that is going to help us next season. It's not going to help you next season.
yeah,
You know, it's not going to help you next season, in my opinion. So in our club, we, I don't ask the coaches, you have to win from 10 tournaments that you play a year, you have to win five because you have a competitive team. You have the top team. You
yeah,
know, I don't ask that.
yeah,
I usually do beginning of the season. We sit down and talk. A month in, okay, tell me how do you see your team? Okay, three questions. Where do you see your team right now? Right? What do you think about your team? What do you have? 6 months from now, where do you want to see your team? right? You have 6 months to work on. End of the season, how do you see the progress? What do you think about your team from for day one to end of the season, and from mid season to end of the season, right? Like 5 month um, progress, right? So if we start the season in August, I give them paper, we sit down and talk, and then in December, which is right before we take our winter break, I ask, where do you see your team, right? You set up some goals at the beginning of the season. Have you reached them in these 6 months? Oh, well, yeah, we have. I see the progress. Like, for example, at the beginning of the season, the kids couldn't come out of the bag with more than 3 touches in a row, right? And that was one of my goals. Have coming out of the bag at least six touches, and now we're going forward, or something simple like that.
Yeah.
Are you doing it now? Yeah, we're doing it. We have no issues now. Comfortable with the ball, okay. And then at the end of the season, if at the beginning you wanted to win certain amount of tournaments because they were going on the right path, and you guys were getting close into winning the tournaments, how many tournaments did you win? Did you win the amount of tournaments that you wanted to? Or if it was one tournament out of the whole year, did you win it? Oh, yeah, I won it. And on top of all the progress that we had, right?
Right.
So that's more of how I measure the coaches. Obviously I always get calls from parents. Oh, we're not winning. The coach this, the coach that, right? But I try to tell them, hey, it's all a process.
Yeah.
It's all a process, and obviously paying attention when there is actually not development, right? When the kids are not, they're staying behind compared to the other teams in their age groups, right? Then that's when there's something wrong, right? So then
Right.
that's when the time has come to talk to the coach and saying maybe it needs a change, right? And finding the right age and level for that certain coach, because everyone is different with different ages.
Yeah.
You know, there might be coaches that work better with little ones, like 4 or 5 year olds, that they're great.
Yeah.
They can do it with the older ones,
Right.
and vice versa.
Yeah.
So that's how we do it uh, in our club. That's how I try to do it. I don't focus only on the wins,
Yeah.
but on the development. Once they get into that level where you have a competitive team, and you're used to every tournament competing for the trophy or for the finals, then you hold them accountable, right? Then the pressure's on,
Right.
because there's no excuses. You have a good team, they're competitive, they shown. So that's the least. The final is the least in every tournament or every league that you play, because you have a competitive team, right? But there's a difference.
Yeah. No, I like what you said, kind of like about setting the goals. The goals isn't we need to win X, X, and X, or we need to win anything, right? It's kind of irrelevant. It's like, can we play out of the back? Can we connect X amount of touches out of the back? Because that's like a more true sign of development, not only for the team, but individually. Because technically, you have to be good enough to do that. Tactically, you have to be good enough to understand how to do that. So I think that's like a really good way to look at it and to do that. And ultimately, at the end of the day, like whatever age they're at, you want to compete. Like you want them to want to win, right? But that's not the end all be all at the younger ages. It's like, are we developing? You still want kids to be mad if they lose. You know what I mean? Because everybody, you want them to have that competitive drive. That's what takes you to the highest level, right? But it's just important to kind of step back and understand that you shouldn't be sacrificing that individual development for the team results at the younger ages. At what age do you think that flip kind of switches where you go from more of a focus on the development of a player to team results kind of mattering a little bit more? Because ultimately, whatever age you're at. Obviously, the young ages, it's about kind of having fun, learning the game, developing. But when you get to the older ages and you're in high school, trying to go to college, trying to play professionally, it becomes more of a business and results do matter. So
Yeah.
where do you kind of see like that real flip happens where now results are kind of trumping development?
So for me, obviously 7v7, right? When you're playing 7v7 under 10, you have to set up a good foundation,
Right.
right? Uh, yes, I'm not gonna care about you're under 10, right? Oh my, I don't care about the wins, right? It's not that I don't care about the wins. Like we said, it's hard for some people to understand it, and like I said, it could be contradicting because
Right.
you still want the kids to win. Don't get me wrong.
Yeah.
I don't want to lose,
Yeah.
right? But it is okay if sometimes they lose, but they lose competing, because in life you're gonna be forget about soccer, right? If you go into a job interview right now, right, you're competing against someone else,
Yeah.
and if they chose them, you lost,
Yeah.
but that's not because you're not good enough, or it's maybe that person has more knowledge, maybe it has more experience, which is fine. It's a learning experience. So same thing with soccer. I want them to compete. I want to teach them to compete not only in soccer, but because in life you need to compete against everyone. You
Yeah.
know, so it's okay to lose competing because you are still learning. If you're losing, you're not competing, and you're not learning, then there's something wrong,
Right.
right? That's when we sit back and say, okay, what are we doing wrong that we are losing and we are not competing?
Right.
Wrong, right? But if the kids are developing and the other team is still a little bit better, well, that's fine. It's gonna happen, right? But when you're under 10, you have to set up a good foundation because they still have to go through 9v9s, which is an 11-year-old and 12-year-olds, right? That is still not the real game because the real game is 11v11,
Yeah.
right? But you still have to keep working on that foundation that you said when they're under 10 and they're playing the shorter field. You know, Once it gets to 11v11, that's it. It's game on,
Yeah.
right? That's what I tell the boys that are playing their first year 11v11, which is under 13.
Mm.
That's when I'm like, you guys are big boys now.
Yeah.
This is the real game now.
Yeah.
This is the real game where it's gonna dictate if you have what it takes. If I'm not saying right now just because you're the best, that's it, right? You have to work, you have to have discipline, you have to keep developing, you have to keep learning, right? But I think past the 13, 14-year-old, that's a crucial age where if you understand the game that first year, it's gonna take you're gonna set a good foundation for the next couple of years, which is seventh graders, eighth graders, and then high school years,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
If you think about it right now, the scouts in the academies or the youth national teams, no, they're focusing on 11, 12, 13 year olds. 14-year olds is like 15, 16, 17 year olds is like you might be too late now. You might be too old. You have to be really good.
Yeah.
That's why they want to take them young so they could develop them their own way.
Right.
If we're gonna invest money, we're gonna invest money, and we're gonna shape you the way we want to. You know, for our first team or to sell you when that time comes, right? So I believe it's at that 13, 14-year old when you're playing your first year 11-11. That's when it's like you have to put in the work as a coach as well to make them understand the real game. You
Correct.
know,
Yeah.
Position by position is where most of the kids are gonna have. If you're a forward, you're a forward now, right? You have the qualities of a forward. maybe when you were younger, 7v7, you were defender or vice versa, right? That's a lot of another topic with parents, right?
Yeah.
No, he's always been a forward. Yeah, he was a forward when he was in the 7v7, 9v9. Now it's a bigger field.
Yeah.
He doesn't have the qualities of a forward. Maybe he has the qualities of a center back or center mid, right? So as a coach, you have to find that position for certain players, and as a team, you have to make sure they understand the big game, right? You have more field to cover. You you have to uh, make sure you're fit enough to go back and forth in the bigger field. It's a lot that you have to work on. So I believe it's the real game. It's on the 11v11, but you have to set that foundation when they're playing 7v7. They have to understand the game.
Yeah.
And there, so I think every stage is important. But for
Yeah.
me, especially is that first year they're on 11v11, game on.
Yeah.
They have to make sure um, they understand.
No, 100%. And I kind of agree. And that's kind of like how I look at things with what I do too. And kind of when I'm talking with parents is like that 13, 14 age. That's where the switch happens, where, okay, now like individual development is not the most important thing. Now results start mattering. We have to bring in the tactical part of the equation and how we're building a player. Like that becomes much more important when you get to those ages, and kind of from those younger ages up until that point, that's where you're kind of really honing in on, at least in my opinion, like your technical foundation, and you're throwing in bits and pieces of the tactical stuff and building that foundation on the smaller field. But it's mostly like, can you become the most technical player possible so that when you get to that higher level and that switch flips, now you're bringing in the tactical stuff, but you already have that technical foundation to go on and succeed. You know what I mean? And I think, like you said, we're not saying that wins and losses don't matter, or at least, like, obviously, you're not saying that. I'm not saying that. Like, we want to compete in everything that we're doing. We're just saying that winning and losing is not the end all be all indicator, especially at those younger ages. And, like, kind of to get more into that, do you think, like we talked about losing and losing being okay at the younger ages, so long as we're developing and competing? What about these clubs where they're the best team in the state at the U10, U11 age? You know what I mean? They're really good. They're winning every game. They have the best team. Does that necessarily mean that they're developing these players in the best way? Can you be winning and not optimally developing these young players at a young age?
Absolutely. And this is a conversation that I always have with parents at that age, that they're looking over to a certain club that at that age they're winning everything, right? Like 9-year-olds, for example. They're like, no, but that specific team is always winning the tournament. They're so good, right? But and obviously I don't know, because I'm not gonna go out of my way to go and sit down the training session of every, and be
Yeah,
like, okay, this coach is actually putting the work in, and this coach is actually. But I explained to parents, okay, it's you have it's two options, right? Either the coach is a really good coach that is developing the players and putting the work in, and day by day, or he's going out of his way, he's picking the best kids from every team, every small team or club, inviting them, putting a great group of 10 players that the kids at that age, they're like really good,
yeah,
and putting them all into a team, and they're so good at that age that they're getting out of, they're getting their way because the kids could play, right? So that's what they're winning,
yeah,
right? So
yeah,
if it's option one, the coach is actually develop them and putting the work, and working with the kids and actually helping them, great. That's a way that's where you want to be.
yeah,
Because you have someone that actually knows and is putting the work and developing. But if it's number two, and this coach just goes and picks the best players to put the team together and win and be the best team at that age right now, well, guess what? How long that's gonna last?
right.
Because the coaches that are number one, right? That they're putting the work and they actually develop the player. They're working with a team that might be right now, if third, fourth in the table, for example, right? This team, this really super team beats them 3-0, for example, right now. But every game they're playing against, it's more competitive and more competitive, and it gets closer and closer. What does that tell you?
Yeah.
That the coach that's putting the work in, he's developed the players, he's on the right path.
Right.
They're staying stuck.
Yeah.
And it should be these guys should be keep going forward, while these guys are going forward too, but it would never be equal.
Yeah.
I don't know if
Yeah.
I'm
Yeah, for sure.
so that's what I tell the parents, just make sure, yes, if you want to go to the winning team, make sure you know why they're winning. Is it
Right.
because of the coach and the work they're putting, besides of the talent that the group has, or is because they're just a group of good players put together that they're winning because of how talented they are as of right now, but work, discipline, organization structure is always going to be these kind of teams that, because at some point there's so much that if he's not a coach and he's just someone putting place, what is he teaching them at the end of the day? At some point they get cut out. So, yeah, I think there's a lot of that in youth clubs,
Yeah.
unfortunately.
And yeah, no, for sure. And even then, like to kind of piggyback off what you're saying too, would you say that some of those teams where maybe they're winning but they're not developing them in the best way, would you say that another way in which you can do that is not necessarily just cherry picking the best talent, but say you have a really good team at U9, U10 with a bunch of really good athletes that aren't necessarily the best soccer players, and the coach spends a lot of time on tactical stuff more than technical stuff. So they just have the fastest players and they're okay technically, but they just use that speed and abuse it and all that kind of stuff. And they spend a lot of time tactically talking about what they're going to do. So they continue winning versus a team who maybe doesn't have kids that are the most athletic, or maybe they do have kids that are athletic, but they spend a lot more time on technical work, individual work, that kind of stuff, and not as much in the organized, structurally tactical side of things. Would you say that's another way in which they can that's kind of what I say, they sacrifice the development for those results right there at the youth level?
Yeah, I think for me, like I was saying, you gotta set the foundation when they're playing, when they're under 10.
Yeah,
You have to work a lot on the technique. A lot of touches, a
yeah,
lot of playing time. Let them beat them naturally, right? Uh, if the kid is, just let them play and let them be them, making their own decisions, and that's how you see what kind of player they could be.
yeah,
You know, naturally, maybe a player likes to. It's easy for him to dribble through people. Another player maybe it's easy to play quick, 1-2 touches at that age. So you kind of know what players they're gonna be, what kind of players they're gonna be. But what I do when I get to train these um, age groups, it's a lot of touches, a lot of technical, like feel the ball.
yeah,
Feel the ball on your feet a lot, a lot, a lot, and repetition, 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 repetition until they're able to get better at that and they able to master it.
right,
Then you move on to the next step, because you cannot skip. You cannot work on coming out of the back, right? At that
yeah,
age, for example, if the kid they don't even know how to open their hips and take a touch while you're turning,
right,
and then playing fast to touch to the side or to the middle or whatever you want them to play. You can
right,
you cannot work on that. You know, you have to make sure the kids know how to turn their hips and play two touches quick first,
yeah,
right? How do you do that? By setting up in the training passing exercises, but it's repetition, repetition, and you might do it for a month every single practice for warm up, and parents might be like, well, they always do the same.
Yeah.
Yeah, but there's a reason behind it,
Yeah.
you know. Um, or another example, like this coach that just put together that this super group, this super team, right? He might not care about does the kid uses the left foot,
Yeah.
right? He's a right-footed. I don't care if he uses the left foot or not, as long as he cuts back and he has a powerful shot and scores,
Right.
right? What I'm working on my right footers and left footers to use their weak foot, right? Why? Because in the game, if it comes to your left and you're not a lefty, if I work with you, you're gonna shoot it. You might score, you might not. The goalkeeper might do a rebound, but we're ready and we score, right? But that was an outcome of you working with your weak foot.
Yeah.
At some point, when we play each other, right? My kids that have been working, they have no problem at shooting with the left, shooting with the right, you know.
Right.
These kids, they don't work on it.
Yeah.
They're used good with their own foot that they're always gonna come back with their foot and try to shoot with their foot. And
Yeah.
if they get away with it, they might score. It might be a good shot, but it might defend their block. So they have no other, you know. So see what I'm saying? Like you're putting
Yeah.
the work in, and at some point that's gonna matter a lot because these kids are working on their weakness. These kids are just keep working on their strengths, like you know. And when they keep growing, these kids they develop a lot of more things that these kids they were just like we're good, we don't need to,
Right.
or maybe the coach didn't know how to identify their weaknesses or what to work on, you know?
Or don't
So,
want to.
yeah,
That's what I
exactly.
mean.
Yeah, it's like, oh, this is working. We're so good. Let's keep doing it. While this guy is like putting the work in, you know, he's not caring about being the best right now. You know, he's
Correct.
working about shaping them and make them understand the game a little bit or working on their weaknesses, you know. So, but I think for me at that age is very important is a lot of repetition and a lot of touches on the ball and the technical part because then when they get to what I call the real game 11v11, at least the kid knows how to control the ball good. You know, it's more natural than you could see when a player has a hard time, like even in their body move, like
Yeah.
controlling the ball. That means, you know, I mean, it could mean a lot of things. They maybe started late on the with the sport, right? They, but if the kid has been playing for a while, since they were 7, 8, and by the time they're 12, 13, if they don't have that natural, you know,
Yeah.
that it doesn't look like it's a big effort for them, then that means they weren't doing like the coaches, they weren't putting the work in, you know.
Yeah. No, for sure, dude. For sure. No, I kind of agree with everything you said, and that's kind of like the ultimate point and like what I'm saying and what you're saying about, team results versus development. Like at those young ages, you're just setting the foundation for a player so that they can succeed when they're older. Like that's what's most important. If they're succeeding when they're young, but you're sacrificing that future development, like that's bad. You know what I mean? And I think that's where parents and youth clubs like that's where we struggle a bit, especially at the younger ages in the US specifically, because everything is so results oriented, which comes from things being money oriented and wanting to bring the best players in and all that kind of stuff. Yeah, so we just got over 45 minutes. We're gonna keep it at right around 45 minutes, just kind of like a half in soccer, and then as we hit that 45-minute mark, we got a little bit of added time. Let's end with one question in added time. So I think kind of my final question for you is what would, and we've kind of discussed this a little bit, but if you could kind of just give your biggest recommendation to parents when they're, especially at those young ages, up until they're 13, what should they be looking for when they're choosing what club to put their kid in if they're getting additional training and with individual trainers or group trainings, anything like that? What would be your overarching advice to parents of the younger kids?
You mean in when they're looking to join a club or private trainings or in general?
Everything, just in the whole development process, say you've got a parent coming to you like, what should I do for my kid? I want to set them up for success in the best way possible. What would in the soccer world, what would your advice be to them?
Well, I would tell them to do their research, right? For example, if they want to join a club, how many clubs around it there are, like how in your area, if you say, okay, I don't want to go past 20 miles, 30 miles. Okay, in that 30 miles, how many clubs are there, right? Do your research, you know, ask to do a tryout for if there's three clubs, try to do a trial with the three clubs, see the environment, ask for their vision, their philosophy, their structure, who the coaches are, who the directors are, what have they done, have they ever played soccer, uh, fees, leagues, platforms, the whole program, not just ask for the fees,
Yeah.
you know, because like I said, they could charge you a lot and it could be really good or really bad, or they could charge you a little bit and it's really bad, or again,
Yeah.
it might be really good,
Yeah.
right? So you get informed of the whole club, like what kind of coaches are they volunteer? Do they have soccer background? Like who's running the club? Who's the director? Like does he have a coaching background? um, the platform, what kind of league, and once you're in the tryout, you don't have to know a lot about soccer, but when something is organized
Yeah.
and structured, right? Um, Again, I don't need to know anything about other sports, but I think if I'm gonna take my son to another sport in practice, at least I know what it could be organized, and structure, you know. Um, but yeah, ask questions, ask questions, and you gotta get informed. Don't just ask about the fees, because that's not the most important when you think about development. Not because it's the most expensive club, that means you get the most out of it, or vice versa, because it's cheap, you get what you get. You'll be surprised.
Yeah.
And when you're looking for private sessions, same thing, right? If you get a private coach, and if he cares about the kid, right? The It needs to look organized. The coach needs to constantly show examples, stop, and give him scenarios of when you're in a real game. Like, what are you doing a specific drill? You know, Everyone could throw cones for an hour and just now do in and out and at the untouchable.
Yeah.
No, but why are you doing it?
Yeah.
If you're working on something, make sure the coach is explaining you why are you doing that kind of drill. Why? Because in the game you have to look over your shoulder and you have to know the space. So this drill is gonna help me to you check in, pretend these two cones or these two dummies, they're the defenders. You have to get the ball in the middle, and now we go forward.
Yeah.
No, that's what we're doing this.
Yeah.
And if the kid is not doing it, you show him the example. So if that coach is doing that, that's the right coach.
Yeah.
If the coach just constantly is like, oh, it's the hour is up. See you guys next. Then there's some of an issue, right? But as a parent, you just do your research.
Yeah.
You do your research and pay attention to what the coaches are doing, either if it's in the club or if it's a private session. It's not easy, but at least
Yeah.
you could do something like that.
Yeah, no, I think that's good. Like ask as many questions as you can and kind of like everything you said, like those are the questions you want to be asking. You want to know like what the club's philosophy is, but also like what that individual coach's philosophy and background is too, because there's good clubs with bad coaches and bad clubs with good coaches. You know what I mean? It's ultimately just finding like what the best fit for your kid, for your family, time investment, financial investment, all that kind of stuff. Like there's a lot of things that go into it, but like everything that you just said, I think that's a really good way to summarize kind of the best way to go about doing that and figuring out what's best.
Yeah, I mean, you're not gonna find the perfect spot. We're never perfect,
Yeah.
but at least something good, where they do care about your player development,
Yeah. They have the right intentions. Yeah,
exactly the right intentions, exactly, that's the word.
for sure, dude. For sure. Well, I appreciate your time. I appreciate you jumping on, taking the time to kind of talk through, give us your background, your thoughts on kind of the current state of everything, and your thoughts on the club. Do you have kind of any parting words or anything you want to say about players or any plug you want, anything like that to close us out?
No, just for the players that have that dream, is not easy. You you have to do what's in your hand, which is work hard, discipline, and um, there's gonna be a lot of people that are gonna tell you no, but you just gotta keep going.
Yeah,
You just gotta keep going, know what you want, and just don't let anyone tell you that you can't. And if at the end of the day it wasn't enough, and you couldn't achieve your dream, make sure you at least you look back and say, hey, I tried my best, and for whatever reason it didn't happen, but it wasn't because I didn't put in the work. Like you gotta be able to be at peace saying, I tried my best.
yeah,
You know, sometimes is not in your hands. Sometimes you depend on people picking you, and for whatever reason they didn't, and for whatever reason they didn't give you the opportunity. But at least you gotta be at peace saying, I put the work in and I try my best. I can't say I didn't. So,
sure.
but it's a lot of work.
Yeah,
It's a lot of work
it's,
and discipline. You gotta want it more than your neighbor
yeah,
and the next neighbor and the next neighbor. It's a lot of competition. So yeah.
yeah. Awesome, dude. Thanks. I'll close it out right there. That's a wrap for this episode of the Over the Line podcast, hosted by James McGee. The conversation doesn't stop here. If we want to push U.S. soccer forward, we need to keep asking the tough questions, challenging the system, and finding real solutions. Together, we can educate the next generation of players and parents, helping them navigate the system and unlock their full potential on and off the field. But if we're serious about creating more pathways of opportunity for our players, it's going to take more than just me. It's going to take all of us. What do I mean by that? If this episode brought you value, take your commitment over the line by subscribing, leaving a review, and, if you feel inspired, helping send this message not just over the line, but straight into the top corner by sharing this podcast with someone who's just as passionate about changing the game. The only way we build real change is together. Thanks for tuning in. Until next time, keep pushing, keep improving, and let's take the game over the line.